Roll call, please.
Matt Conant,
Present.
Bruce Johnson, Bill Conley,
Here.
Bo Shepherd, Mark Baumgarten,
Here.
excuse me, Charlie Hoppin, Gary Marlar, Lac Vergog, Mike Morris.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mike, would you lead us in the flag salute, please?
All stand. Salute. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. First, we'll start with public comment. Members of the public will be allowed to address the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency Board of Directors on items of interest that the public are within the subject matter and jurisdiction of the board. Any member of the audience who may wish to bring a matter before the board has not placed on the agenda may do so at this time. However, state law prohibits no action may be taken on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. We have one speaker card, Drew Stresser. Yeah. No.
There's a button on the, yeah.
There we go.
There,
Better?
you got it.
Again, Andrew Stresser, Levy District 1 and 9. Thank you, board, for having me here today. At times I usually get to sit up there with you, but as a member of the audience, I'd just like to give the board some information. Levy District 1, every few years we send letters to Sutter County, City of Yuba City, notifying them of the inhabitants, the structures, the debris that's accumulated in the floodway. This year's no different. There's been a lax in some of the enforcement due to resources and whatever political agendas, but it's again accumulating, and wanted to let you know that Levy District 1 will be submitting a letter to Board of Supervisors of Sutter County Sheriff's Office, City of Yuba City, as well as Yuba City City Council. And we're going to bring that letter before Sbfca, since many of you do both sit on both boards, and look for Sbfca to help endorse this letter as well. There is an ordinance in place that Sutter County has, 1780, which specifically states, based on the flood insurance study of 2008, Sutter County was obligated to pass this endorsements, which no structure shall hereafter be constructed, located, extended, converted, altered without full compliance from the terms of this chapter and other applicable regulations. So we feel that that hasn't been followed, and that we're going to look for more support here to help eradicate this issue that continues to happen. So thank you very much, and we'll look to see you next board meeting.
Thank you, Drew. Any other public comment?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just touch upon this
sure.
item real quick. Drew will share that letter with staff. We'll review it, provide any input or suggested edits to that letter. Depending on what it says, and if it needs to come back to this board for some sort of approval and authorization to sign off on it, or write our own letter, I'll bring it back to the board next month. That'll be the plan.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, moving on. We have the consent calendar. Consent calendar groups together those items which are considered non-controversial or prior policy direction has been given to staff and that require only routine action by the board. The chair may advise the audience that any matters may be adopted in total by one motion. However, the board may at its option or upon request of a member of the public consider any matter separately.
I'll make the motion.
1 through 7, 6?
Yes.
1 through 6.
Second.
Roll call, or do you want to do a voice vote? We can do a voice vote, we're all here, right? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. 1 through 6. Okay, item number 7, information update to two-door flood risk project, Sutter Bypass East Levee.
All right, Mr. Chairman, Chris Fritz, our Director of Engineering, is going to provide this briefing to the board. So this is on our two current design projects. One is the Tudor Flood Risk Reduction Project in the lower Feather River, and the other is the Sutter Bypass East Levee Repair Project. So with that said, Chris, take it away.
Hello, members of the board. Hope you all had a nice Easter weekend. For my presentation today, I'm just gonna, as Michael noted, provide you all with an update on two of our projects that we have going on right now, the Tudor Flood Risk Reduction and then the Sutter Bypass East Levee project. Got about 15 slides that I'll run through, and then we can open it up for questions at the end. So as a refresher, this is our Tudor Flood Risk Reduction Project. This project is our project that's currently in design. We're working towards the 90% submittal right now. This is located downstream of the Feather River, right at the confluence with the Sutter Bypass. So it's about 1.6 miles. All of the levee work and improvements that we've done upstream of 99 are now complete, either to a 100-year level of protection or beginning at Starbend North all the way to Thermalito, 200-year level of protection. So this work will essentially be the work that wraps up the work that we'll be doing along this section of the Feather River. Construction cost right now is estimated at a little over $16 million. For the work that we'll be doing, we will be constructing cutoff wall improvements through this reach. And really those improvements can be broken out into really two different reaches, almost split right at the middle there of that S-curve that you see. The most upstream reach, closest to 99, is the deeper wall that we'll be putting in, be about 60 to 65 feet from the working platform. So when they go in to do the cutoff wall improvements, they'll degrade the top section of levee to form their working platform, and then they'll essentially excavate down from that point to construct the wall. The downstream section, which is about 4,000 linear feet, is a shallower wall that'll be about 35 to 40 feet deep. For the most part, construction is relatively straightforward, or our approach for construction. We do have some penetrations right in the middle there around Station 52 with some existing pipes that we'll need to deal with. And we also have sections that feature landside irrigation ditch, as well as a ditch on the water side there, which is Nelson Slough, that we're going to have to work around. But excuse me, other than that, construction should be pretty straightforward. This here gives just overview, kind of a typical cross section of the work we'll be doing. You can see there on the left side of the screen, that kind of shows the landside ditch I was talking about. This doesn't show, unfortunately, the Nelson Slough waterside ditch, but the area shaded in blue there is the area of levee that will degrade as part of construction. That area will be, or the material will basically be pushed to the side. They'll excavate, construct the cutoff wall, and then they'll reconstruct the levee back to its original lines and grade. So I wanted to give you just a couple highlights of things that the team is currently working on right now as part of design. And one of those things is our tie-in at Highway 99. So upstream of here, we have completed the cutoff wall improvements. Those improvements terminated just upstream of 99. And our improvements that we'll be doing as part of the Tudor project will need to tie in. And unfortunately, since we're not able to construct those improvements right through the highway, the team has been looking at different approaches for how we will address any potential end-around effects. We don't want any windows or any potential for that under seepage to make its way either around the new wall improvements. We want to make sure that tie-in to the existing wall is done appropriately. And so a couple things that they're looking at doing. One is a 90-degree bend in the cutoff wall right at Highway 99. So you can see here there would potentially be about a 100-foot section of wall that runs kind of parallel to 99 north. You can see there in the photo, that photo is looking north. Highway 99 there is I guess, on your right, if you were to look at that picture. And then the other approach that they're looking into is a seepage berm at this location also. So we're currently in discussions with our independent panel of experts on this approach as well. We've had continued coordination with them throughout the design process. We actually have a meeting scheduled with them next week to talk specifically about this approach, just to make sure they're understanding of what we'll be doing and making sure they concur with the remediation. We also have been in coordination with Caltrans because we will be working right there in, at and near that embankment of the freeway. So we started those discussions last month, and we'll be continuing to coordinate with them on necessary approvals for us to get out and facilitate the work. This gives you just a little bit of a overview. The other thing that the team has been working on is the pipe penetrations that will need to be removed and then replaced as part of the project. So there is an existing pressure pipe. There's an existing pump station right there, right near the middle of the project, that pumps drainage up and over the levee into Nelson Slough. That picture is kind of standing on the levee looking into the slough, looking south. And then they also have 2 gravity drain pipes that will be removed and replaced as part of the work. So the details that we're currently working on are a lot of details related to how we'll facilitate that work during construction. So the temporary bypasses that'll need to be put in order to maintain whatever operations are needed there to facilitate drainage while construction is ongoing. And then the specific dewatering activities that will need to be done in order to construct the outfall structure, because that work will be taking place right within the slough. We're working on detailing that out, and that information we're also including all of that descriptive info into our permit applications as well for the project. So for general overview on kind of where we're at, this is today. We're in between 65 and 90% design. There's also a lot of work going and taking place on the environmental and permitting side as well. So our environmental consultant has been very busy putting together our admin draft CEQA document. That EIR, the admin draft actually was just delivered to us today. We'll be looking to review and provide input to our environmental team with the goal of getting that out for 4 to 5 day public review in May. They're also busy working on our 404 and 401 applications. And we have already sent the request to the Flood Protection Board and the Corps to initiate the 408 process. As I mentioned, we are coordinating very closely also with our independent panel of experts / safety assurance review panel. We met with them last week to go over general comments regarding the 65% design submittal, and those discussions were what led to our meeting next week, specifically on that tie-in at 99. Just as a heads up, assuming everything goes smoothly with the CEQA review, we will be looking to hopefully bring that back for board adoption in September or October of this year. And then the 90% design is still on track to be completed in July. So for the Sutter Bypass East Levee overview, this project is just starting. So we're just kicking off our design team. This project is the 5.2 miles that runs basically from Hughes Road down to Gil-Sizer Slough. Construction cost right now is estimated at about $50 million, but we will be refining that number as we continue to proceed with the design. So we're currently in the data collection phase. Our geotech team is busy working to get some additional explorations done. MHM has been out doing topographic surveying the last few weeks. They're looking to wrap that work up next week. And then we've also begun some of the preliminary right-of-way investigations. At this time, we're not anticipating the need for any acquisitions or anything like that as far as the work for this project. We feel like we have enough right-of-way within the existing land already owned by SSJDD for the bypass system. But we are kind of beginning that work, and we'll be preparing a real estate plan to document that. Some things I wanted to just bring up that we'll be continuing to work through for design of this project. One of the big things is going to be the DWR pump station right there at the end of O'Banion Road. They do have, the state owns and operates a fairly large pump station there. So what we do with the existing pipes that they have that run through the levee at these locations is going to take some work to figure out the approach that we want to go with. The other things that we'll be working through that's a little bit unique to this project also is the fact that the work that we'll be doing through the upper reaches will be right adjacent to and entirely kind of within the Sutter National Wildlife Refuge. So we're starting to look into now, whether or not that'll pose any unique challenges potentially for construction when we get to that point. There's also, just to note, some deeper wall depths right near where the historic Gil-Sizer Slough exists. What our team has looked at so far is that they feel that the depths needed at this location can be done conventionally, meaning the conventional approach for cutoff wall improvements is your typical long stick boom excavator with a bucket. That typically can be done to depths of around 80 plus feet. If it gets much deeper than that, then you have to go with some alternative methods such as deep soil mixing, which can be a little bit more costly. So right now we're thinking that this section can be done conventionally, but it is something that we'll be kind of continuing to refine as we as we continue to move through the design process. And then the other thing, just as a reminder, you know, I know Michael's been busy with a lot of conversations he's been having with the state and others, but we are still working on acquiring the construction or the construction funding that we need for this project. So for the schedule overview for Sutter Bypass East Levee, I didn't anticipate getting into this in detail. Don't worry, I know there's a lot here, but essentially we're just starting. This is us today. The 65% design submittal. So this is just to give a little perspective, so for where we're at with the Tudor Flood Risk Reduction Project right now, we'll be there with Sutter Bypass East Levee about this time next year. So we do have quite a bit of work to do over the next year to get to that 65% design point. And then we have a construction target for this project scheduled in 2026. So assuming everything goes smooth, I know there's a lot of things that are sometimes out of the agency's control in order to hit that 2026 target date, but that is what we're working towards right now. So that concludes my presentation. Maybe at this point I'll turn it back over to the board, see if there's any questions or comments.
Thanks, Chris. Any questions for Chris? Seeing none, I actually have a couple. So your CEQA cost, what do you think it is for that project? I mean, for the...
Is that the cost to do the environmental document?
Yeah. Just rough. I mean, I was just curious.
I would have to get back to you on that. We issued a task order to ECOR, which I believe was around, don't quote me, a $700K, but it included a full list of other, that includes our 404 and 401. So I'd have to look to see exactly what the CEQA component was.
But that was just for the levee improvement. That wasn't for the bypass, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So roughly 750. That's not bad. I mean, a lot of money, but compared to what county has to pay for certain little projects, it's unbelievable.
Well, and keep in mind that is the upfront work, right? Mm-hmm. So once we go through that permitting process, then we get handed mitigation measures from resources agencies and monitoring requirements and a lot of other things that we'll need to do as part of construction too, which also draws from that same category of, environmental related funds.
Okay. And then my last question was, so one stretch, the initial stretch of levee you're going to degrade, and you got to go down, 65 to 70 feet, something like that?
Yeah, for that upper reach, it was about 65. Yeah.
And then the lower version is only like 35 feet. But are you degrading the levee on that also?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Well,
so the entire reach will have the typical levee degrade. It's just the wall, from what our geotech team has found, doesn't need to be as deep in order to mitigate the under seepage issues in that lower reach.
Cool. Thanks, Chris. Any other questions for Chris? No. Okay. Thanks, Chris. And then next is information and possible approval items. Number 8, presentation and file monthly finance reports.
And Mr. Chairman, Seth Wurzel is on vacation this month, this week. But I'll be handling this presentation, and I'll make it fairly short.
Okay.
Next slide, please. Yep. So just briefly on this slide, I wanted to highlight the working capital. So at the end of February of this year, we had almost 20 million, so 19.6 million. Since that time, we have received additional revenues through various sources, one in the assessment district, and then getting reimbursed through our multiple grants. So we're looking at right now in the bank of about $25.7 million. So we're in a pretty healthy financial situation right now. Next slide, please. So this lists our revenues received. So we received from state and local sources, like I said, the assessment district, all multiple grants with our various state agencies. So this is how we track our receivables. So the pending at the bottom there, the 7.3, that was, if you add that to what was on the previous slide of the 19.6, that's how we get to our current balance to date. Next slide, please. So these are the expenses that the LWA lists for us here for all the various projects. And we track all of our projects like this, and we account for each and every one, and work with all our grant agencies, and get reimbursed for the majority of our expenses are all grant funded. So we're in a good situation there, and also working with the two counties for our assessment district receivables. So we work very closely with the counties to get the revenues from our assessment district. Next slide, please. This is the last slide. So this is pretty much lists the work that LWA is working on, in addition to tracking, all of our expenses and revenues, and putting together all our packages to get reimbursed through our grants. They're also working on closing out our UFR funding agreement with DWR. That's for the Feather River West Levee project. We're also working closely, or LWA is working closely with the Wildlife Conservation Board and CDFW on the existing grants for the OWA project. We're very close to closing out the majority of all those grants for the 2018 project. I'll talk about the additional grants later. And then LWA is also supporting the Feather River West Levee Financing Authority. And we're working closely with Wildan under that program. We will be having a Feather River West Levee Financing Authority board meeting next month after this board meeting. So that'll be, I think, the first one this year. I don't think we've had one yet in 2023. So that'll be our first board meeting this year. LWA is working closely with me on the regional levy impact fee. We're working closely with all our member agencies, the land use agencies, to get those fees adopted by the various councils and boards. So that's a one-time fee on new development to help pay their fair share into our program. And lastly, LWA is working on our budget. So we'll be taking that preliminary budget to the board next month, and Seth will present that budget to the board in May, and then we'll come back in June for adoption. So it gives the board time to digest and ask questions. So that's the plan. So we'll be back here in May with a preliminary budget and the budget approval in June. So I will turn that back over to you, Mr. Chairman, see if there's any questions on the financial report.
Any questions on the financials? Seeing none, moving on to item number 9, presentation and file of programs and project updates.
Okay.
Back to you, Michael.
That is back to me. Thank you. So here we are, the Feather River West Levee project. So I keep saying this every month, we're close to finalizing all of these environmental and cultural mitigation activities that we've been working on. We just exchanged emails with CDFW and Fish and Wildlife on our Starbend and Matthews Valley Elderberry mitigation site. So we're close to finalizing that process. And we're also working closely with the Army Corps on our cultural resources mitigations, wrapping up all of those reports to satisfy the requirements that were placed on us as part of our project approval process. The O&M manuals are completed, and we got confirmation from the Central Valley Flood Protection Board staff that they have sent those out to the various levee maintaining agencies here within our basin. So I'll be touching base with all of those agencies to ensure that they receive them. And working on right-of-way transfers to the state of California. So we're getting very close to wrapping up all that work necessary to transfer over the 100 plus properties that we've acquired real estate from and be able to transfer those over to the state through the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. On Feather River West Levee Project 2, that's our Tudor Flood Risk Reduction Project. Chris just gave a good presentation there. We have an IPE, Independent Panel of Experts meeting on Monday. We're advancing that project, so that project is underway also. Next slide, please. Sutter Bypass, Chris talked about that as well, so I won't get into any more on that. On OWA Robinson's Riffle, I think I noted last month that we've received various grants now. A lot of money starting to come into our program through the state to advance the Orville Wildlife Area and build upon all the good work we did out there in 2018 and 2019 in the Unit D area. We have our $1.1 million planning grant from DWR, so we're starting to kick off that project. We held a good field meeting with CDFW staff last week, and we're getting good input and starting to lay out our schedule for that project. So we'll bring more information back to the board on how that project proceeds in the near future. We also just received a $2.1 million grant from CDFW to design and permit what comes out of the planning grant. So once we have a preferred alternative design that's fully vetted through all the various stakeholders and grantees and users up in the Orville Wildlife Area, we have the money now from CDFW to actually design and permit that project. So that's a very good position to be in. We also, one of what we're calling like a no regrets project that we're moving forward with right now is the boat ramp and campground project at the Thermalito Afterbay. So we're partnering with the Wildlife Conservation Board and CDFW to advance that project, also DWR. So all these state agencies are working together with Sbfca to advance that project. The Wildlife Conservation Board is taking a $4.4 million grant to their board next month, and that'll be to fund Sbfca to advance the project. And then CDFW is going to make up the balance of that $6.4 million project through a federal source of funding that they have access to. So we're closely coordinating with both of those agencies to advance that project. And Chris and I are meeting with our WCB grant rep tomorrow out at the site so she can see it for the first time. So it's exciting news. That project is advancing through multiple stages, so we're excited about that. On the sediment removal project side of things, we haven't been as successful as we have been up at the OWA to receive grants. So we're still working with our state partners to try to find funding to fund the phase 2 work that we want to do. I'm reaching out to the Yuba Water Agency now to see if they would be a willing funding partner to advance that project because it benefits both sides of the river. So I'm in active discussions on that now with YWA staff. And then on our regional flood management planning grant process, and YWA is a partner in that project with us. We received our phase 4 grant from the DWR for $260,000. We're issuing contracts now with the consultant team that was working with us on phase 3. And so we're going to continue advancing the planning efforts for the regional flood management planning in the Feather River region. Next slide, please. This is my last slide. So we're also, as I brought to the board a month or so ago, City of Orville is looking for assistance to help with repairs of a levee that they have in their system that is in disrepair. It's about 1 mile long. So Chris and I have been working with city staff to scope out a services agreement and a scope of work that Sbfca would offer up to the city. So we're in active dialogue with city staff on that right now. As soon as at both sides, staff level, have some agreement on what type of services and how those services would be paid for, I'll bring that back to the board for approval. So that's in the works. On the federal project side of things, working closely with the Army Corps to close out that 5-mile project that the Corps constructed south of Star Bend. There's still a couple of punch list items that have been long overdue to be completed. I think we're making good progress, and I think that work will get done here once it's, we're out of flood season. Also, so on the federal crediting side of things, as I've reported to the board last month, we have approximately $28.9 million in credit as a result of Sbfca and DWR advancing the Feather River West Levee project ahead of the Army Corps. So when the Corps finally caught up, we had constructed the majority of what was deemed the federal project. And we have this credit left over. So we can't utilize that within our basin, and we want to sell that credit to convert it into cash so we can, use that cash to build flood risk reduction projects here within our basin. So last week, Director Charlie Hoppin and Todd Kimmelshoe and I met with the Sbfca reps. They had 2 board members and their executive director. So we had a really positive negotiation. We ended up with an agreement in principle that we're going to be documenting. Actually, Scott Shapiro is going to document that for both Sbfca and Sbfca. We'll be able to bring the terms of that agreement to this board for approval next month. So I don't want to get into the details in a public setting like this. But it was a very good discussion, negotiation, very cordial on both sides. Both sides were looking to benefit from this arrangement, this negotiation, and I think both sides walked away feeling like they did benefit greatly. So more to come on that. FEMA remapping, Chris's team is putting together the FEMA remapping for Sutter County. We're waiting on the Corps' contractor to finish with the as-built drawings on the that 5-mile project south of Star Bend. So we need to incorporate that into our FEMA package. So we're anticipating later this summer, hopefully we'll have everything packaged up and we'll be able to send that off to FEMA. Let's see, our regional development impact fee. So like I said earlier, we're coordinating with the various land use agencies, the member agencies. We anticipate taking our the first land use agency that's going to take an action on this will be the city of Gridley. And we're looking to do that next month in May to get that approved, and closely followed by the city of Biggs. And I believe Butte County will be hearing it in the near future, and also working closely with Sutter County staff and City of Yuba City and Live Oak. So all of those need to come into play. Hopefully this year we'll get all of those completed and be able to have a one-time fee on new development within all the land use agencies within our basin. Just wanted to highlight, so we have our board meeting next month in May. So we will have the federal crediting item coming back to the board. We will have our preliminary budget. So those will be the 2 big items coming back to the board next month. And with that said, I'm going to turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman, and see if there's any questions from the board.
Any questions for Michael? Seeing none, any questions from the public? Seeing none, we're going to adjourn the meeting. Meeting adjourned.